Hey there folks, Aldershot here, and today we're going to do an impression on Zombie Vikings, developed by Zoink Games, and it's on sale on Steam at the regular price, around $20 USD. Now this is a beat 'em up, which is a genre that I really like actually. It's something that I played a lot as a kid. You know, Golden Axe and Streets of Rage, etc, right? Now something interesting about Zombie Vikings that I'm not really a huge fan of, I'll be completely honest, is Day 1 DLC. It's kind of weird for an indie game. It's not really a trend that I'd like to see continue. But it is there, you know. I'm not just talking about soundtracks either. There are actually 2 additional characters that you can purchase if you so desire. I won't crucify the game too much for it, but I will express that I'm not really a big fan of Day 1 DLCs, right? Again, hopefully it's not a trend that will continue as far as indie games are concerned. But anyways, at the end of the video, we'll talk a little bit about the game's extra features as well as its options, but for the time being, let's just jump into it. Now, before you jump into it, there are 4 available slots for you to play. You know, it is only local co-op. Unfortunately, there are no online, but it is nice that there is multiplayer at all, so I'll give it that. Now, something weird about this game, or at least this menu here, is that there's this invite friends button here, and when I press it, it just kind of highlights my character for some reason. I thought originally that maybe I could invite my Steam friends to play, but that's not the case. Again, there's no online, it's only local, so I don't really understand why this button is here at all. If I was to invite my friend locally to play this game, I'd be like, hey friend, would you like to play some Zombie Vikings with me? I don't understand why I need this button here to do that. It seems a little bit weird and useless, to be completely honest, but it is what it is. Again, I just don't understand it. Anyways, let's just jump into it. We'll just play single player because we are on our lonesome right now. There are versus arena, and we'll talk about that mode after we talk about the main staple of the game, which is story. Now, when you jump into the game, you are whisked away in this kind of world map here. This is the hub area. It will allow you to kind of play through areas you've already finished or continue your journey, etc, what you would expect from these kind of world hubs. Now, I've got about 2.5 hours into this game. I haven't completed it yet, but judging from this world map, I'm thinking maybe, this is purely speculation now, I'm about halfway, maybe a little bit more through the game. I'm not completely sure. I do want to emphasize this is purely speculation, but my experience is about 2.5 hours in, okay, give or take. Anyways, let's just jump into an area we've already finished, as not to derp around too much. Let's just say maybe this here. Alright, Bon Doug or some shit like that, I don't know. I'll let the cutscene play through as to give you an idea of what they're like.
In my cauldron.
My toes are temperature sensitive.
That's okay. The water's cold.
Cold is a temperature.
What? Ooh, the old soap dropping routine.
No. Oh, God, no! I have to get it back, even if I... Wow, this has got to be really bad for Odin.
So there you go, an example of the game's you know, voice acting and cutscenes. Some were actually pretty funny, I have to admit. Not all of them. You know, the humor is really weird in that it seems to be kind of kid-friendly, but then you get stuff like what you just saw, which is a little bit lewd. You know, it is rated teens. But the humor style, like I said, it feels almost like a Saturday morning cartoon. And they do kind of go into places where it's a little bit edgy, a little bit more adult. So there you go, that's a bit of the humor. Anyways, before you start the game, you have your selection of your 4 characters, and of course you buy the DLCs, maybe 6 characters. I didn't. This game was provided to me by the developers, by the way, just as a little note there. But yeah, you can choose from your, different characters, and they all play pretty similar, with mainly their special ability that kind of separates them from one another. I'm gonna go with Kaka. She's my favorite. And you can also select from a variety of different items and weapons to choose from to help kind of customize your loadouts, to help emphasize your playstyle choice, if you will. And they all have their own individual stats. Some of them will have different attributes, like the sneeze. We'll go into info. This weapon here, the Gesundheit, there you go, knocks enemies up into the air, 5 seconds cooldown. It's allergic to living people, apparently. So that's kind of interesting, has his own little special ability. But we're gonna go with, say, the Shock and Awe, which gives me a bonus in speed, which is something I like. Now you also have a rune slot as well, and like the weapons, they give you some passive buffs and some passive attribute bonuses and all that kind of stuff, and they come in different varieties, whether it be HP regeneration or poison vomit, or health or speed bonuses. We're gonna go with the speed bonus because I just like to be speedy. Alright, so let's just jump into the game here. So let's go over some of the basic mechanics first and foremost. Hey, so you have your regular attack. You can also hold your attack to do a more powerful attack, just like that. The more you combo, the more you chain, the more damage your regular attack will do as well. Something to note. You also have, let's see, you can also pick up things like your piggy ally friend here. You can throw it at enemies, causing them damage. You can also pick up enemies as well, and I think objects as well. Yeah, you can pick up objects just like that. You also have your jump, as you would expect. Now you can also dodge, just like that. You can also block, and you can roll out of a block as well, giving you some depth in your defensive maneuverability. Then of course, you have your special ability. You can hold it. In this case, for Kaka, I get this little reticle, and it'll do extra damage when I slam into people. But if I tap the special ability move instead of holding it, I will knock enemies back, giving me a little bit of distance between me and them. Right now, you also have your jump attacks, as you will. I'm not sure if I can do it right now, but if you can jump high enough, you can also do a slam attack. And that's essentially the core mechanics of the game. Now, something you might have noticed is that it's not just left and right or jumping up and down. There's also a Z-axis as well, where you can go in and out of the background and foreground, giving you an extra little bit of dimension in your gameplay. It's actually pretty similar to, say, Castle Crashers, which is definitely a beat 'em up that I really enjoyed. In fact, the whole game kind of feels a little Castle Crasher-ish, actually. But let's just bring this... Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Let's bring this drawbridge down, and I didn't mean to do that either. Let's see if I can not derp this. Why does she keep throwing it downwards? Let's just... There we go, much better. There are some very basic and simple puzzles like that, but nothing too hard on the brain. It's pretty basic stuff, really. You got your enemies, and your enemies do come in a variety of different varieties, I guess. These are just the grunts, the little dudes. The trash mobs, if you will, the easy kills. These brains, they will regenerate your health. And I think this one will give us coins. Yes, it does. And coins you collect, and that's what you use to buy the items that we were talking about earlier. Right? So the combat, even though there are a fair amount of different ways to fight, as I mentioned earlier, you have your special attacks, your jump attacks, and all that kind of stuff, it is fairly basic, to be honest. This is kind of button mashy. It's fairly noob friendly or casual friendly, if you ask me. Not necessarily a bad thing. You could argue that the game is accessible, and that's not a bad thing. And in fact, the earlier levels are actually pretty much a cakewalk. It's very, very easy. I didn't struggle whatsoever. But in the current map that I'm playing, my actual game, I am starting to run into a little bit more difficult scenarios, let's just say. I have started dying a little bit more, and all that kind of stuff. So that's not to say the game's without challenge, but certainly I can't say it's quite as challenging or as difficult as some of the more old school beat 'em ups such as Golden Axe or, you know, Streets of Rage or anything like that. It's around as difficult as Castle Crashers, I want to say. Now, because there's a Z-axis, because you can go up and down the foreground, sometimes you'll find these hidden paths, and sometimes, you know, they'll either give you, you know, extra crates that you can bust up for loot, or in this case, we can get a side quest, and that'll give us some bonus coin as well. Return the missing Kitty Pop barrel. I think I've already done this one, actually. But yeah, be on the lookout for hidden paths, as I mentioned. And that'll give you some bonuses. Let's take out these guys with some of our special attacks, just like that. Put some distance between ourselves, just like that. Utilize our special abilities. So yeah, as far as the combat goes, you know, it's really fast. It's pretty easy to get a handle of, and it's pretty fun when you first start off, and I've yet to really get bored of it. However, I can't really say it's not repetitive. It is a little repetitive. It is a lot of the same thing, a lot of button mashing and all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily a fault of the game on its own. Oh, here's a kitten thing. Let's bring it back to our friend. I think we gotta finish this combat scenario first. But anyways, as I was saying, might not necessarily be a fault of the game itself. Generally speaking, especially when you're talking about the old school beat 'em ups, you know, they tend to be a little bit repetitive. So it's kind of a common, if you want to call it, issue with this genre. However, let's bring this to our friend here. Yay! And now we'll get a weapon, I think. However, as I was going to say, the Castle Crasher game that I think this game drew a lot of inspiration from. I really like Castle Crashers for a couple of reasons. One is because it's a beat 'em up, and I like beat 'em ups. I also like the graphics and the style of it, and I like the humor. But besides that, I found Castle Crashers did a good job of kind of mixing things up a little bit, you know? It's not always just kind of going from one area to another, beating things up. Sometimes they'll throw some interesting scenarios your way, you know? Sometimes you'll be on a boat with a very limited platform to do your combat in. Sometimes you'll be riding a farting deer in order to get through the level. Whereas this game, you know, it has boss battles, and there are some chase scenes, but it's not quite as varied as Castle Crashers, right? But like I said before, this repetition problem, quote-unquote problem, is a fairly common, quote-unquote problem in the beat-em-up genre. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing either, right? As far as how I feel about it, yeah, okay, I'll have to admit it. Sometimes I do kind of get bored of the game. I'm just like, I gotta take a little break. You know, there's only so much button mashing I can do, you know, in a couple of hours' time, right? And I feel like if this game did a better job at mixing things up like Castle Crashers, I wouldn't get that feeling. However, when I'm not bored of it, you know, when I'm not feeling the grind of the repetition, I am enjoying the combat. I do like, you know, the fact that the game does have a little bit of depth. It's not just a one-button beat 'em up. It's not just smash, mash, 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 mash. You know, you have your special abilities, and learning how to roll and block properly to avoid damage is definitely adds a little bit of depth to the combat, which I definitely like, right? But it's not so deep and difficult to understand that. You have to be an elite hacksaws to do well in the game, you know? Like I mentioned before, I think this is fairly casual friendly, but with enough depth to keep, I guess, the more hardcore gamer interested. So these are good things. These are good things. So yeah, the mechanics are fairly sound in my opinion, albeit a little bit repetitive. Now let's talk about the art style and the presentation itself, right? I think it looks great. You know, I really like the art style to it. It's has this very interesting, very colorful and whimsical kind of digital arts and digital illustration look to it, and it kind of emphasized the illustration aspect even by when you're turning around. You can kind of see the character's thinness as though it is a piece of paper, right? And this is actually very similar to the style that the developers did for the original game, which is called Stick It to the Man. I think the developer was under a different name at the time, but it is by the same guys. And Stick It to the Man had a similar art style and similar aesthetic choice of having the character kind of be flat, especially you can especially see it when it's turning around, right? However, in Stick It to the Man, it made a little bit more sense because it's about stickers. It's about brain washing stickers. It's a little bit of a weird game. In this one, it doesn't have the same kind of connection to the narrative. It really is just purely an aesthetic choice, right? But yeah, either way, I like the art style is what I'm trying to say. You know, it looks great in my opinion. And the music's nice too. I think it's pretty upbeat, you know, it's pretty silly, it's not overly serious. It complements the art style and the story of the game quite well. I'll be quiet for a second so you guys can, you know, take a good listen. Okay, the music ended there, but hopefully you guys kind of get the idea, you know. So as far as presentation is concerned, I don't really have any complaints. This is pretty good. This is definitely one of the reasons that I kind of, you know, got a little, you know, one of the reasons why it drew my attention is because of the art style. I'm a little bit of a sucker for good-looking games, I have to admit, and this game definitely suckered me into playing it because of that reason. Anyways, let's just jump into the map that I'm currently on. This is beating brats in Richside. So this is going to be a little bit harder. I might die a couple of times here, but we'll see how it goes. We're going to just skip the cutscene. It's not to spoil too much, and I think you guys already kind of have an idea of how the cutscenes and voice acting will play out anyways. We'll use a different character. We'll use Gunborg. She has a pretty cool little ability herself, and we'll explore that, of course. Let's go back to our speed weapons. I like my speed build. It's something I enjoy. I like playing quickly, if you will. Her special ability, you press the Y, she can actually pull herself to enemies, continuing her combo. If you hold it, she'll pretty much explode, causing a lot of damage, but it will damage you as well, right? So there's a risk and reward in her special ability, but I really like her. She's definitely my second favorite, I think. So, oh, I just missed that. But as you can see, I can kind of pull myself, continuing my combo to get too far back, like that. Just like that, right? So I really like that aspect of her ability. But other than that, as you can see, you know, the two characters, you know, Kaka and this character here, who I forgot her name, I think it's Gunborg or something like that. Her abilities, you know, besides her special abilities, they play pretty similar, you know. There's not that much differentiating aspects or attributes about them outside of their special abilities, right? So as far as the DLC characters are concerned, I'm not really sure if it's worth it just to explore another special ability, especially considering these characters already are pretty varied as far as their special abilities concerned. Ironically, like I said, everything else about them are not very varied at all. They're pretty similar in how they play. So yeah, there you go. So my overall thoughts about Viking Zombies. I think it's a good game. You know, I personally think it's a good game. I think it's pretty well put together. The art style is really nice. I really love it. The gameplay, you know, like I said, it has some depth to it, but it's not like super difficult or super like so deep that it'll require studying, if you will, in order to get good. You know, it's not Golden Axe, it's not Streets of Rage, you know. Those are kind of more, I guess you can say, hardcore beat 'em ups. You know, they're definitely very, very challenging, especially in later levels, and there's a lot of little nuance in these mechanics to learn and to kind of master. This one doesn't seem like it has as much. It's a lot more button mashy, it's a lot more casual friendly. Not necessarily a bad thing, but if you are sensitive to, you know, casual friendly games, that you might want to avoid this one, I think. Simply because, you know, it is fairly easy. When compared to classic beat 'em ups anyways. I think it's easier than Castle Crashers 2, actually. I know earlier I compared the difficulty to Castle Crashers, but in hindsight I think it's easier, in my opinion, right? Anyways, let's kill this bomb guy. He's kind of annoying me here. But yeah, overall it's not the most difficult game in the world, is what I'm trying to say. But it's entertaining enough. You know, there's enough depth in the combat, there's enough variety in the attacks to keep me interested. And that's something I like, and I'm a big fan of beat 'em ups, and this game kind of fulfilled my itch for a new beat 'em up, which is not a bad thing. It's too bad that there's no online. That's definitely a negative. I think this game would be a lot of fun if it had online. I mean, Castle Crashers had online, and one of the reasons that game is so successful is because of its online play, in my opinion. And as far as the humor and the story is concerned, it's kind of take it or leave it. You know, it's rated teen because there is some, I guess, sexual references and some drug and alcohol references as well. But outside of that, like, it's not overly edgy. It plays it pretty safe, in my opinion. And outside of the sexual references or the drug and alcohol references, it's actually kind of kid-friendly, in my opinion. You know, but that's just me. You know, I like slightly more edgy humor, if you will. One reason why I like Castle Crashers so much is because the humor is so ridiculous and edgy, as I mentioned earlier. You know, you got farting and pooping deers and fighting for princesses, and the winner gets to make out with her and all that kind of stuff, and kind of pushes the edge a little bit. And this game doesn't really do that, so it doesn't really scratch my itch as far as humor is concerned. And the story is pretty nonsensical. It's not something I really pay too much attention for. I'm really just playing this game for its gameplay, which is actually pretty enjoyable, like I mentioned before. You know, I'll be a little bit easy, even though I just died, but entertaining enough to keep me interested. So that's essentially how I feel about the game. It's pretty good. It's not bad at all for a beat 'em up, and I would only imagine it being more fun with some friends, which unfortunately, again, there's no online, so it's not really a part of the game that I've had a lot of or any experience with, which makes me a little bit sad, actually. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's not bad, guys. It's really not bad. The main concerns, again, is the repetition and it not really moving the genre forward. You know, it's not that original. You know, it has a pretty original art style, but as far as mechanics is concerned, it's pretty standard issue as far as beat 'em ups are concerned, right? So there is that. Anyways, let's get out of this, drop out, and talk about the extra features a little bit, and talk about the options before we exit. Let's go into the options first. You know, you got your sound effects, voice, music, audio sliders, standard issue. As far as graphics and displays are concerned, let's go into advanced. You can turn shadows or noise and depth of field on or off. You have your bloom, SSAO, which is I believe is an anti-aliasing, and vignetting. I'm not really sure what that is, to be completely honest. Sorry, SSAO is a shit. What's that called? It's a post-processing. There we go. Anti-aliasing is right here. So as far as graphical options is concerned, it has more than most 2D sprite games. I'll give it that, you know, and it's probably that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And that's basically the controls, or sorry, the options. Start the game, join game here. Let's go into the versus arena. And there is some options here. Let's just quickly jump into it. Oh, I can't play this alone. Sorry, guys. Apparently, I can't show you this. So apparently, you can only play this with other local players, but it's nice to know that there is an extra option to keep the player distracted, something for the players to explore outside the main game. Unfortunately, as we can see, it's only local and it's only multiplayer. You can't really set up a bot, which kind of sucks. And there's no online to play this with, which again kind of sucks, right? So there you go, guys. That's basically Zombie Vikings. Overall, pretty good. I definitely enjoyed it for the most part. A little bit repetitive, admittedly. And it doesn't really move the genre forward that much. It's really just another beat 'em up. But it's a really good looking beat 'em up. And it feels really good as well. There's enough variety in its combat to keep players interested, in my opinion, right? So it's not bad, pretty decent, not bad at all. Anyways, that's about it. Hopefully you folks enjoyed this. Hopefully you found this useful. And if you did, you know, show me some love, like, share, fave, and comments. If you haven't already, subscribe. I'll bring you lots more video games just like this. Thanks for watching, everyone. Aldershot out.